Hi everybody, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel, Hallmark Plus More, where we watch and talk about shows, movies, mysteries, Hallmark ornaments, and anything else that floats our boat. So today I'm going to be reviewing High Potential Season 1, Episode 9. So before I get into the review, I just want to say thank you to everybody who likes, subscribes, watches my videos. I appreciate you so much. So thank you for doing that. Now, getting into this episode with Morgan, right at the beginning, you kind of see that she's bringing her baby to the crime scene. So, if you've been watching the show, you see that that's in kind of the beginning of the show in the credits. So I'm waiting for that episode where she's bringing the baby stroller to the crime scene. So I guess this is the episode she does it in. So, and in typical Morgan form, she turns the baby and she goes, yeah, this is my baby's first crime scene, but I'm a good mom. I turned her aside so she didn't see the dead body. So she still has that humor in her, which is why I think Caitlin does such a great job portraying Morgan. She brings the baby to the crime scene. It's actually of Marvin Price. He is a baseball radio announcer, kind of a legend, won a ton of awards. People in the police station, have heard of him. So this is a high profile case. It looks like he was run over, and we find out he was run over twice. So obviously somebody wanted to make sure he was dead. And you find out that his last words was tiddlywinks. And you see throughout the episode, Morgan is watching hours and hours of broadcast to try to see if he says that, to try to figure out what it means. They interview his son, Dexter. And he didn't have a great relationship with his dad. He wasn't into sports. He was into theater. Him and his husband have a little girl. So, they fight a lot because his daughter has autism. And Marvin didn't really want to give him much money that they asked for. And Morgan was like, well, that's his granddaughter. And Dexter was like, well, it's his step granddaughter. So you find out, and this happens a lot with idols, right? You find out people you idolize and celebrities. Sometimes it's, they're not the best person. You find out their true colors sometimes. However, Marvin isn't alive, obviously, to defend himself. So we never want to be judged on just one side of the story. But that's how they portray it in this episode. So Dexter is obviously mourning the death of his dad, but the last conversation he had with his dad, he was in the car and basically was arguing with him as he was being run over, basically. So he heard the words tallywinks or, tiddlywinks, so to speak. So that is definitely helping with the case, but Morgan's trying to figure out if he's ever said it before and what it means. And then the son is quick to point fingers, of course, at the house manager, which he puts in quotes because he thinks his dad is having an affair with her. Or I should say a relationship. I don't think he's married anymore. And her name is Tiara Johnson. So you meet her. I didn't get the feeling that she was involved with Marvin. I don't know why. I just didn't get that feeling when they interviewed her, and it turns out she wasn't. She actually had a boyfriend, and they found out, the boyfriend drives a motorcycle, and he comes to the house every time Marvin is away announcing. So they kind of figure out, okay, well, she's not involved with Marvin. She has her own boyfriend that comes to the house when he leaves to go on his broadcasting trips. And then, you find out that he stole the neighbor's car, which I have to say, they had a guest star. That was the neighbor. So, most times when you have a famous guest star, usually that's the bad person, right? But I just didn't get that feeling. I felt like he wasn't telling the whole truth. And he wasn't. His car was stolen and he reported it. So it turns out, Steven Guttenberg, which I love from 3 Men and a Baby. So I recognized him right away. Wasn't the killer, but the boyfriend who drives a motorcycle actually stole the neighbor's car and ran him over. So what's interesting is you do find out what tiddlywinks means, and it means a waste of time. And, Tiana said that's what Marvin kept calling my boyfriend. He was just a waste of time. He wasn't jealous. He just thought I could do better. So that ultimately led to he was the one who did it. So, it did come into play. Morgan did finally figure out what it meant. And then when she went back to Miss Johnson, she says, yeah, actually, that's what he would call my boyfriend. So that's kind of what he was saying. His last words was calling out his killer. He called him a waste of time to Miss Johnson, and now that's basically what he's saying, before he's killed to his son. So there was a little touchy moment with Adam and Dexter, like, hey, I did get to say goodbye to my dad, but, I want you to know that, your dad did love you. He had all of these awards in his home office, but the only picture he had on his desk was you framed in the theater costume, like doing a play. So I really like that Adam took the time to tell that to Dexter because, anytime we lose a loved one, it's so painful, and everybody grieves in a different way. But to, lose your father, arguing with him and thinking he's calling you out like you're good for nothing or whatever. I think Dexter said he called him a vulture or something. I mean, it's just terrible. You're losing your parent who you obviously love, even if you don't like them. We love our parents. So I think that was really hard for Dexter, to know, well, he didn't really love me. So I think what Adam was telling him really helped the healing process for him. So I'm glad to see that because it's so difficult. I feel like even as adults, people still try to please their parents. And I'm hoping this will help Dexter move on. Him and his husband have their daughter who has autism, and, autism is on so many different levels. There's a spectrum, so you really don't know what level of autism she had, but still, it is a lot to go through for parents. So I feel like he had a lot on him. So any kind of relief and comfort. So I really enjoyed that conversation because it showed that softer side of Adam. And I really think it meant something to Dexter. So I'm glad they included that. And throughout this episode, you do see a little bit of Roman's cold case that the lieutenant said that she was going to help Morgan with, and you actually see Geo, which is the man they talked about in the last episode that had met at least more than once Roman. So it was like exciting to see them in the diner, like, okay, are they going to get information? And of course Morgan, being her quit wit self, she kind of had to come back for him when they were talking, and it turns out he wasn't going to give them information. Basically, he was saying, hey, I have a nephew that needs to be in rehab and not jail time, so are you going to help me out? And basically they're like, no, and he leaves. So that was a little disappointing because you kind of felt like you were going to get some information about Roman. But then, of course, she, talks to a couple people and brings Adam into the loop, and Adam was actually able to help with the DA get him into rehab, the nephew. So then you're like, okay, are we going to hear from him again, right? And then he's waiting for Morgan, which is kind of scary when anytime somebody you don't know or has a bad reputation is waiting for you, right? And he's like, let's take a ride. Morgan was like, no, you never get in the car with strangers, nevertheless somebody who's a shady character, right? But she does. I think Morgan has good instincts, right? So she gets in the car and he basically says, look, I'm going to be going away for a while, but when I come back, I might have something to tell you. So of course Morgan's like, yeah, we got your deal with your nephew to go to rehab, and now you're just leaving us. But I feel like it sounds like, yeah, he's just leaving, but I got the feeling that he's going and actually getting information. Like, he's not just leaving to go on vacation, or like he's saying, okay, you help me out, I might have some information for you when I get back, but I have to go meet with somebody. I think that was kind of his way of saying, now I'm going to go help you. When I get back, I might have some information for you. So I hope I'm right, because obviously that side story of finding out what happened to Roman is kind of that, backstory that you're bringing along to every episode. And then the very end, Morgan doesn't necessarily believe him. And he's like, I bet you don't even know Roman, right? You just wanted a deal for your nephew. And then he tells Morgan a piece of information that Roman told him himself. And it was personal. It was like, you're called the Rams, right? Roman, Ava, and Morgan. And you called yourself the Rams. Roman told me that. So I feel like Morgan was taken back because I think that was something personal. I don't think a lot of people knew that. I mean, he's disappeared for 15 years. It's not like she's going around telling people that's what we called ourselves 15 years ago, right? So the fact that Gio remembered that and that Roman felt the need to tell him something personal like that makes you believe, okay, maybe, Roman and Gio did have something going on. And he really did know Roman. So that's kind of like the very end of the scene. So like I said, I didn't feel that Gio was just going to leave him high and dry. I kind of had the feeling he was going to go find something out. But it kind of reaffirms what I was thinking with, hey, you guys called yourself the Rams. So it kind of ends with Morgan being optimistic, I guess. So for this episode, I mean, I thought it was a good episode. I always like anytime they bring in the information with Roman. You also had a conversation with Ava and Morgan where she basically admits to her mom, hey, I heard you that night, the lieutenant knocked on the door. I know that my dad had the diapers in the car. I believe he disappeared. So that was nice that Ava kind of had that heart to heart with Morgan. And then, of course, I mentioned, the conversation between Dexter and Adam, which I think kind of touched on Adam's soft side and kind of spoke a little bit about his dad. And it gave Dexter a little bit of that closure because to lose a parent in that way, being on the phone and arguing with them and not thinking that they care for you and arguing over money of all things, that's got to be hard because Dexter's gonna, feel like he could have done something different and so I'm glad that they had that conversation. So all in all, I think this was a great episode. Like, again, I loved the guest stars, Gio and the neighbor Phil. I love those actors. I love that you can kind of see guest stars in there. So all in all, I thought it was a great episode. I hope you enjoyed watching it. I appreciate you watching my review, and until next time, bye.